Tim Refat, of course, is an eccentric, eclectic fellow who has his own views, and he has been extraordinarily correct on many issues over the years. It's been a lot of years. Does it mean that psychic powers and prowess around the world? I don't know. I really don't. Another man who has foreseen this remarkably clearly for as long as I've known him, which is probably 20 years, is Dr. Joseph Chiappalone, M.D., who is now retired and lives in Australia. And he, years and years ago, went on an expedition to Mexico, way out in the remote areas of Mexico, along with Joyce Murphy in one of her Beyond Boundaries trips. And they contacted people. Dr. Joseph Chiappalone did especially. I think he kind of did his own thing, but they contacted people in remote little villages in the outback of Mexico and asked them about ovnis, as they call them in Latin America, OVNI, or UFOs as we call them here, and what, if anything, they knew about them. And what he found was very interesting. And we'll let him maybe touch on that a little bit, but he then really made I think, a name for himself in the world when he launched his essay, which I still very proudly have on site, Terminal Madness of the End Times. This was, again, a precursor of things to come, and he was smack on the money. It's really, I guess, not too hard to see where we're going if you can just look honestly at where we've been. Then you see it. Joseph, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Hello, Jeff. Thanks for having me back. Yes, I'm well. I hope you are too.
Good. I'm all things considered, we have radiation up here, and I'm beginning to see things that suggest, to me at least, that after 3.5 years of low level, but no level is safe, of exposure and bioaccumulation. Well, we know we're seeing it in the ocean. The ocean mammals are dying. The salmon are dying. The herring are dying. The sardines aren't even findable anymore. The starfish are dying. So many species are dying. I think I'm beginning to detect among those at the top of the food chain, Homo sapiens, human beings, the signs of radiation-induced mental impairment. I'm seeing things and just getting a sense, a feeling, an intuition, if you will, that people are doing things now that are just getting to be a little bit stranger than they should be. And I don't know if you would agree with that, if you have any sense about that, but that seems to me to be what's going on. People are still eating things out of the Pacific Ocean, crazy. Radiation continues to come over in the jet stream and the lower level wind currents. It comes over, of course, in the ocean now, which is up against the west coast, thoroughly contaminated with radioactive nuclides. And those nuclides are migrating from the ocean onto the shore and into the general geology and ecology of the areas right along the beach. Wherever the marine layer goes, this radioactivity will go with it. So I'm seeing things I don't like at all. As you well know, the radioactivity continues to be pumped into the ocean 24 days, 24 hours, 31 days a month, 365 days a year. It's not slowing down, Joseph, at all. There's nothing they can do. So how do you see it from down there in Oz?
You're quite right, Jeff. I'm not sure where the report came from, but I remember seeing it a few months ago that said that particular radiation will kill all the seas by the early or mid-2020s.
In time, yeah.
My very first book that I released in 1985 said the planet was going to be cleared of all physical life in preparation for its total destruction. This is just one step. The radiation is just one step up in clearing living things out of the planet. Why it has to be done, I've explained before. We've gone through it in depth. You know, you and I have been doing shows over 20 years. We know the end point of all this. So the important thing is now to prepare for that end point and see where some of us are going to go from then on. When I released information in 85, it didn't make any sense because everything appeared so stable. But now you mentioned that this mental fragmentation that people are undergoing, it's due to physical factors for sure. For example, the radiation, the chemtrails with their cadmium and aluminium and mercury. And
barium and strontium, allegedly,
the vaccines, the medications that are affecting
how about
brains.
The GMOs? What they're doing with GMOs was said last week to be in and of itself enough to end all life on the planet over time.
That's correct. I had that in the essay I posted the other day. And also Wi-Fi. People think it's a wonderful thing, but it's actually destroying brains. And I also told you that brains generally, in the majority of people, lower minds are controlled by the programming and pollution and indoctrination of this mechanism that controls people as robots and demons from another level. Now, that mechanism has been dismantled. So all these minds, unless they've attached to another mechanism, which is to a higher mind of a divine order, are just going to go berserk. In other words, they're going to be erratic, like robotic toys that have broken down, the battery's finished, and they collapse all over the place. And this is what's happening to minds all over the world, not just in any one particular spot. The only ones that have remained sane while this terminal madness is taking over the whole world are the ones connected to this superior consciousness that I've spoken about in the past. We're lucky now, well, in a sense, we can see exactly what's going on. If you read that essay I just posted on my website and yours a couple of days ago, we can see all the mechanisms now that lead to final termination of life on Earth. That does not mean that it's termination of life. The physical existence is only one small part of an existence, and it's a small, artificial, temporary part of existence. There's an ethereal existence, there's an astral existence, and there's a divine existence on many other levels, because creation is far greater than just the physical dimension. I've said that the physical dimension was an error that has to be disassembled sooner or later. And by the way, that's the oldest message in the oldest book that we have on this earth, and that comes from the sacred scriptures, that ultimately the earth would be destroyed and the righteous will be rewarded and the evil ones will go to perdition. So it's not something anyone's made up. Every son of God that we call avatars that ever presented on this earth has only had one message, that eventually this place has got to finish. And this place was condemned when it refused, the one who built it refused to cooperate and cleanse it, as it were.
Well, I'm beginning to see, you described it very well, I hate to say this, but it's my observation that I'm beginning to sense in the news, the flow of the news, the pulse of the news, texture of the news, such as it is, mainstream or alternative, I'm beginning to sense a jaggedness, a ragged texture, a beginning of a fragmentation of logic, cohesion. Now, we know Americans are being, and all people are being dumbed down in the developed world. We know that. But I'm talking about a lack of an ability to act in a linear, logical, pragmatic fashion. It seems to be more of a random mental functioning in many people. Not all evil, not all bad, but it's not what it was 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It's changed. That's my sense of it. Now, I may be totally wrong. I don't know.
No, you're totally right. Bingo, you've got it. It's the fragmentation of minds. It's the fragmentation of the physical in general, of the bodies, of the seas, of the air, of the soil. Everything is fragmenting. Now, all these things they've tried in the past and succeeded are no longer working. The ones
they
that
are
aware are seeing through all the evil schemes, and they can't get away with it. But on top of that, the ones that are causing all this evil are unimpeded in their self-destructive mode. They've been allowed to self-destruct, and that's exactly what they're doing, and that's exactly what the end point is going to be. They will destroy themselves and the rest of us, because we have to leave the physical anyway, as the physical is destroyed by other mechanisms that I've explained in the essays. So you're absolutely right, and you can see through the illusion of where they're trying to stimulate Americans to go to war again against ISIS, a thing they made up themselves, like they made up Al-Qaeda, to go to war for no other reason than to stimulate their economy, to keep the dollar on the top, to gain more wealth, and so on and so forth. But this time it's not going to work. And although they will have a war, no one will win. Previously they thought they'd won, even though they'd lose a few thousand soldiers and kill a few million of the lesser breed, as they thought of them, in the opposition. Mm-hmm. But now no one is going to win. And this coming war that they're definitely stimulating, trying desperately to get started,
no winners.
Is going to be the end of them and the end of most of us.
Yeah.
So you're right. What you're seeing is perfectly correct. You're seeing with your inner vision that there's that fragmentation, that mental fragmentation that will lead to this self-destruction that I've spoken about earlier in other shows and so on and in my books.
Yeah.
The end point of it all, Jeff, is we're all going to leave this physical life. But not all of us are going to go on to other living, to other creative living in divine realms. Quite a number, in fact, the majority are going to end because they are not worthy to continue. Now, I'm going to mention a point I've never made before, but I think it's time to do so. They are not going to be simply transmuted and go into a pleasant eternal sleep. Of course not. Their minds are going to be unblocked. They will be transmuted, but they will exist in an eternal moment of terror that equates to the accumulation of all the pain and suffering they have caused others. Now, this is really, really a horrendous state to be in, and that's what is awaiting these evil beings that we've identified throughout the ages. So I want them to know they're not going to get away with anything. They have to pay back. That's the divine justice. Uh-huh. So none of you, none of my readers, none of your listeners should worry at all about them getting away with anything. They will get away with nothing. And these people are liars, hypocrites, and murderers, as we know. They've destroyed country after country after country. They've caused so much pain and suffering to good, just, loving people. They will not get away with it. They have to pay for every urge of suffering that they have caused others, and they will. So this is an horrendous end for them, and they will now know that. I've never revealed this before, but it's time to do so. So what is really happening, people have to get their heads around this, that nothing is going to get better. That is a positive thing in a sense, because it means the end of all evil. Evil is finished. Not just this planet, but this galaxy at this time. Other galaxies have already been eliminated, and the ones that remain will be eliminated shortly. But it's the end of this evil, and we go on to better things.